Alright, so on the show today we are talking about NPS Vatsalya, and now to talk more on this topic, I have with me Wiseinvest CEO Hemant Rustagi. Hemant, good evening and welcome to the show. We will be taking our viewer queries, but then before that we were discussing about NPS Vatsalya on the show today, where parents and guardians can invest for their minors in NPS. And what does this actually mean? Are we talking about our kids' retirement? Because we are in times where although the corporate uptake in NPS has gone up and people are really getting familiar with the idea of starting early, as far as the retirement goal is concerned, but we still see issues where people are finding it difficult to save money, and because of the short-term goals as well, and retirement, a very long-term goal, doesn't come first in their mind. Talking about NPS Vatsalya, are we going to use this money for a child's education? Are we talking about securing our kids' retirement? How can we understand this? We are waiting for more details, obviously, from the regulator's point of view also. But so far, how do you understand this product?
So, Kavita, I think it's always an important goal that every parent want to kind of start investing for their children's future. Obviously, most of it is for their education, and also ensuring that they understand the process of investment, provided you actually involve them in the process. So I think it's always a good idea to start investing for your children, because even if you talk about education as a goal, you really need a large corpus to give them the kind of education you would like to give them. And we also know that in our country, the education inflation is much higher than the normal inflation. So clearly, it makes sense to maybe look at different options. As you rightly mentioned, we are awaiting details as to how exactly this will work. But I think this is going to be one more option. Clearly, if you look at the existing options, there are always children plans. You've seen that. Also there are mutual funds, the plain vanilla mutual funds, equity-oriented funds. So I think there are a number of options, plus the small savings schemes, and depending on each investor's risk profile or understanding, they choose different options. So I think this is just going to add one more option to, like I said earlier, to try and build a corpus for your children's future, which can be used for different purposes. But there are already, like I said, existing options which are available. We need to really look at and compare in terms of liquidity. We also need to compare in terms of flexibility. And of course, most important thing is, because you'll be investing for a very long period, the potential of return and what kind of investment plans will be allowed in that.
A lot of details are awaited, but then having said that, NPS has its name attached to retirement, and if we are allowing parents or guardians to invest for the minor, this primary should be for their education. In a way, it is good that you're looking about your child's future, but even then, would you consider NPS for your child's education purpose?
No, look, Vita, like I said, there are a number of options which are available to you.
Sure.
Because even when you compare NPS with other investment options, even in the original form for retirement, right? There are so many other options, and of course with the NPS, obviously the issue in terms of retirement has been that the 40% of the money you get compulsory annuity, where the returns are very low, not tax efficient. So there are issues, even though a lot of steps have been taken over the years to make it more investor friendly and more acceptable to investors. But like I said, I think this is going to just add one more option. Look, the fact is, despite mutual fund being there, despite other options being there are a number of investors in our country who are still investing in a very conservative option for their children's education, thinking that this is one of the most important goals and they wouldn't like to take any risk on that money, which obviously is not the right thing to do. Maybe this will add one more option. I think the important thing is to understand the nuances of each of the option you're looking at, and then work out a suitable solution, and then start investing with that.
Even in the NPS schemes, I'm not talking about NPS Vatsalya, but where adults can invest, a normal NPS scheme, there are partial withdrawals allowed. Around 25% is allowed after investing for 3 years, and then later on, almost 20% of your corpus after 5 years. These are also for under certain criteria, which could be child education, home loan, and health. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Talking about aligning your child's education goal via NPS. We are still not clear on the details, but then I'm just, taking assumptions over here and considering NPS as a product which is not only for retirement but your child's future and specifically about education. Can we also have a diversified portfolio? You mentioned that in your answer also, because we want to have a goal specific strategy, a goal specific approach, and for that NPS or any other investment instrument really works for you. But how much of it can actually work and how much of an exposure should be given to what kind of investment instrument is always a very tricky thing to understand from an investor's point of view. Assuming or, just factoring this part that it is for child education, we're talking about NPS Vatsalya, now how much money of your investment should be going in this particular kitty for this goal, and then you can diversify this particular investment in other instruments as well.
Well, Kavita, like I mentioned earlier, I think it's important to analyze different options on different parameters. One of them, obviously, also important factor is when do you start investing for your child? At what stage do you start? For example, if someone is, let's say, if a parent is starting, investing for child education immediately after the birth, I think there is long enough time to kind of invest in even in 100% into equity, despite the fact that equity can be volatile, equity can be risky, but the fact is that when you're investing for such a longer period, you will get higher return. So like I said, one of the crucial factors is at what stage do you start investing? And again, you need to see, like I said, the different on different parameters, especially flexibility can be very, very important. You see what happens is any corpus that you accumulate is not something that you will require as soon as the child gets admission in the professional college somewhere, right? You pay it over a period of time. So it all depends on what kind of flexibility is provided in this, because it's not that you're going to take out all this money and use it for the next 4 years. Whereas if you look at, let's say, mutual fund as an option, you can, if you have to do regularly, you can do systematic withdrawal plan, or every year you can kind of withdraw and use that money for the child education. So like I said, I think it all depends on what kind of flexibility which is there and what kind of investment option that will be given to decide for the parent to decide the right kind of mix.
All right, so that was all about NPS Vatsalya. Once we get all the details, we will have this topic once again on the show. But Hemant, let's move on and let's talk about our viewer queries. First question coming up from Sanjeet Ruban, and Sanjeet wants to understand his fund mix. He's doing SIP in Pare Flexi Cap, Kotak Small Cap and Kotak Emerging Equity. And given the recent market condition and concerns, small and mid cap valuations, the concerns over the valuation for mid cap and small cap, he's been thinking it would be good to consider booking some of his profit from this small and mid cap and switching to any other mutual fund category. And he also wants to understand if Kotak funds which he's holding can be done for a longer period of time, or there are any better funds where he can switch to.
Well, Kavita, since we're talking about specifically about small cap and mid cap, look, the valuation can be concerned. It has been a concern for some time, and I'm sure even in future there will be occasions when we will question the valuations. But the fact is that if you're building a portfolio for a longer period, and if you're investing in a disciplined manner through SIP, the fact remains that both these segments, large and small, mid and small, have the potential to deliver higher returns than the large cap. But obviously, that does not mean that you will invest only in these two segments. But the fact that you are investing systematically, and if you're investing for a longer period, even if there is a market volatility and your proportion of exposure to these two segments is right as compared to the large cap, which means that there is still a bias in your portfolio towards the large cap, I don't think you need to really worry about that. The major benefit of investing in a disciplined manner is that it gives you an opportunity to invest at lower level and different levels every time the market turns volatile or every time you see a correction. So I think as long as you've chosen your funds well, as long as your allocation to these two segments is fine, you have a longer term horizon and you're following a disciplined process, I don't think one needs to really worry about exposure to these two segments. And let's not also forget that our economy has been doing very well, and you are going to see a rate cut at some stage. So obviously in that kind of economic growth and that kind of scenario, surely the companies in these two segments will do well. So I really wouldn't be worried about having these two funds in the portfolio, but the proportion has to be right. As for the funds which are there in the portfolio, Kotak Emerging is definitely fine. Pare Flexi Cap is fine. In the small cap category, I think he can consider Nippon India small cap, as against Kotak small cap. So I think that's one change in the portfolio in terms of allocation. Like I said, I think both these segments, the exposure to both these segments have to be an integral part of the portfolio.
Okay, let's move on and let's take Raja Maheshwaran's question. Now he says that between 2017-2019 he invested almost 50,000 in 5 different funds. He had Tata Birla, DSP, IDFC and Mahindra Manulife. Now the query is that will he have a profit threshold of 1 lakh without any tax for each individual mutual fund? Or it will be an aggregate of the entire mutual fund investment. He wants a clarity on that.
Well, I think that's an important question. I would say first thing, I think it's important to understand that this exemption limit on long-term capital gain is for a financial year, right? So which means that in a year, if your capital gain does not exceed this limit, you don't pay any capital gain tax. Before Union Budget 2024, it was 1 lakh. Now it has been increased to 1.25 lakh. Now, it's also important to understand where this is applicable. So if you're invested in equity or equity-oriented mutual fund, as well as if you have direct investment in the stocks, both are eligible for this. This is a combined limit. So it's not for each fund. It's not for each of your investment, like I mentioned earlier. It's equity and equity-oriented funds and stock market investment. And this limit is for 1 financial year. So if the issue is that since he hasn't made a large investment, and if he is looking to redeem, if he can stagger over the next maybe 2 financial year, maybe he will end up not paying any capital gain tax on that. But obviously, like I said, it's for 1 financial year and not for any one mutual fund or one particular investment type.
Okay, let's move on and let's take Aditi's question. Aditi says that she would like to invest 2 lakh rupees lump sum in mutual funds, and what kind of funds would you suggest for that? And she would like to invest in both mid cap and large cap oriented funds as well.
Well, I think the most important thing when you want to invest in mutual fund is to have clarity in terms of time horizon. Assuming that if the longer term, the view is to invest for longer term, especially if the intent is to invest in equity fund, through SIP, then the time horizon according to me should be minimum at least 7 years and beyond 7 years. If that's the case, definitely the investment can be made in the equity fund. My belief is when you start, it's important to understand how equity behaves. It's important to have exposure to different market segments, but do it with a diversified fund rather than looking at mid and small or large cap separately, because sometimes the rebalancing or understanding can be a bit of a problem. So maybe a multi-cap fund and a large and mid-cap fund, I think it's the best combination to start. It could be Kotak multi-cap or Motilal Oswal large and mid-cap. If it is going to be one-off investment, if it's the first investment, it's important not to invest the entire sum at one go, because the way the markets have risen and the level that we are in, my recommendation would be to invest through a combination of lump sum and systematic transfer plan. Maybe around 30 to 40% can be invested as lump sum, and the remaining through STP over the next 3 to 6 months. I think that will ensure that you're not committing too much money at one level, and even if there is a volatility, it gives you an opportunity to kind of bring your average cost down.
All right, let's take Sachin's question. He's invested in Pare Flexi Cap, Pare Asset and Quant also, and Quant ELSS, I think. And he's also got one more fund in his portfolio, Quant and Nippon Small Cap, and Quant Mid Cap also he has in his portfolio. Okay, investment horizon is 10 to 15 years. Hemant.
Kavita, can you repeat the funds? I don't seem to have those fund names with me.
Sure. So it's Pare Flexi Cap, Pare Asset and Quant ELSS fund. I think he's got Quant Mid Cap and Quant and Nippon Small Cap fund.
Yeah, I think I would say broadly the funds are fine, and I think the time horizon also allows him to invest in equity. I think he can continue with the existing portfolio.
All right, I think with that it's a wrap on the question answer session. Thank you so much for being on the show and helping our viewers with every aspect of their financial planning on their financial portfolio today. Thank you. And I'm going to leave our viewers with our WhatsApp number and email ID so that you can send across your questions with all the investment details that you have so that our expert can chalk out a complete plan for your financial goals based on the investments you've made. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.